Hey, what's up? Tristan from Huge Menace here. Welcome to part 14 of the ND add-on deep dive series. This is the last video in the deep dive series. We'll wrap up the deep dive series by reviewing ND's preferences so you can customize ND to fit your workflow and tastes. Let's go. For most of this video, I'll have ND's preferences on the screen while I discuss what each setting does. We'll go from top to bottom, left to right. So, starting off on the first tab, General, we have the utils collection name. This is the name that ND will give the collection it creates in your scene hierarchy to store all of its util objects. You can call this whatever you want. The default is utils. Use fast booleans ensures that any boolean operators use the fast solver algorithm by default. If you've watched the video on booleans, you know why this is enabled by default. However, feel free to uncheck it if you want every boolean to use the exact algorithm. Automatically run solidify after recon poly is self-explanatory. It's a great way to quickly create cylinders by skipping the additional necessary clicks if that's what you tend to use recon poly for the majority of the time. Enable right-click select is for those of you who still prefer to use Blender's original right-click select functionality. Turning the setting on won't enable right-click select in Blender globally. You must still enable that in Blender's key map preferences. All the setting does is make ND more compatible with it. If you don't use right-click select, leave this disabled. The default angle to use for bevel and smoothing operations. This is the angle that ND will automatically set for you on any operation that requires an angle if it affects bevels or smoothing. 30 degrees is the most widely used and, therefore, the default. However, you can select from any of these three if you have specific requirements or prefer to work with a different default angle. Set a path for a custom screw heads blend file. The screw head operator pulls different shapes from a blend file included with the ND add-on. You can find it under the Assets folder wherever you install ND on your hard disk. Select a custom one here to use something other than the default blend file. Ensure Blender has the correct file permissions and can access that file, or you may encounter issues. Automatically check if ND is up to date when Blender starts. This option only appears if you're using the add-on version of ND. If you're using it as an extension in Blender 4.2 or higher, Blender will manage the update checks for you. With this option enabled, ND will quickly check when it loads to see the latest version number. If your installed version doesn't match, it'll show an update message in the main menu and the end panel, including a link to download the latest copy from Gumroad. The last two settings on this tab, Enable Deprecated Features and Enable Experimental Features, are for advanced users and developers working on ND. You can safely ignore them. Leave them turned off if you have no reason to use them. Okay, on to the next tab, UI. First, we have Overlay DPI. This is the value ND uses when calculating how large the text in the overlay should be. If you have a large monitor, such as a 4K or higher, you should increase this value so the overlay doesn't appear too small. Enable mouse values will cause any parameter in ND's overlay that supports mouse-driven values to adjust when moving your mouse cursor left and right. If you prefer not to have that occur, you can disable it here. When disabled, you must adjust parameter values using your mouse scroll wheel or the up and down arrow keys. Mouse value scaler is a factor applied to the amount of movement detected by your mouse when changing parameter values. Increase it to make it more sensitive or decrease it to make it less sensitive. Mouse value steps is how far the mouse needs to travel before increasing a step value. This is used for specific parameters like the count on an array. The lower the value, the quicker those step changes occur, or vice versa. Unit increment size is the number of units ND will increase or decrease a value by. So, for instance, if you work in millimeters and hit the up arrow on a width parameter when an ND overlay is open, it'll increase the value by 1 millimeter. Enable Quick Favorites will add your Quick Favorites menu to the main ND menu. This is particularly useful if you change the default ND shortcut from Shift-2 to the Q key. Lock Overlay Pinning ensures that if you lock the overlay in place using the P key while it's open, it will reopen pinned at the same spot next time. If this setting is disabled, the ND overlay will always follow your mouse cursor around the viewport, and pinning it will be temporary. Enable the sidebar or end panel ensures that the ND menu can be accessed via the end panel. If you never use ND from the end panel and wish to save some space there, you can disable it here. You'll need to restart Blender for the changes to take effect. Enable Access Visualization, causes Andy to draw an X, Y, and Z axis in the viewport for certain operators such as arrays, profile extrude, etc. Disable the axis visualization if you don't wish to see it here. Below that, we have some additional settings for the axis visualization: how thick the line is by default, how thick it is when it's the active axis, and what opacity inactive axes are. Finally, we have custom overlay options. We covered these in the previous video about the viewport operators, so I'll skip over explaining these again. Okay, next tab, key map. The first three options we have here set which keys you'll press to pin the ND overlay, pause the ND overlay, or reset a parameter in the overlay if it's been locked in. Below that are the Blender key binding maps for all significant ND Boolean functions and menus. This section is split into mesh and object modes, so you can customize the keys for each. Mesh key bindings are active while you're in edit mode, and object key bindings are active when you're in object mode. For instance, if I prefer to open ND using the Q key, I can click on the Shift+2 binding and hit Q to set it. I do that in both sections to ensure I can open ND the same way in both object and edit mode. And finally, we have the Theme tab. Here you can set ND's colors for the overlay, points, and axis visualizations. So, for instance, if you're running a custom Blender theme and the default orange color of the ND overlay title doesn't suit, you can easily change it here. Alright, we've officially reached the end of the ND Deep Dive series. If you've made it this far and watched every video, congratulations. You should now be super comfortable using the ND interface and have a good idea of its operators and capabilities. If you enjoy using ND and want to support its continuous development, please consider purchasing it from Gumroad or the Blender Marketplace for any price you think is fair, or becoming a patron. All the links are in the video description. I hope you've enjoyed this series. Please consider subscribing, commenting on the video, or joining our Discord server. We'd love to say hello. Until next time, happy blending.